Here's where we first see Chekhov and Sulu tromping near Mount Rushmore and thoroughly lost, although this scene is far more important in establishing an essential fact to know about this movie. These are two actors who clearly are doing their best to try to give a shit when they really don't.
All right, we're lost, but we're making good time.
When ordered to return to the rendezvous coordinates, they decide to try to save face by pretending to be in a blizzard. Uhura immediately sees through it, since she's on a ship designed to scan planets from space after all, although it's a wonder that piece of equipment's working. Sulu and Chekhov this film exist for two reasons, and this is one: to be the butt of the jokes. Chekhov tries to add to the realism of the lie by blowing hard on the communicator. At this point, Koenig's contempt for his part is obvious. Just watch his delivery.
Sulu, look. The sun's come out. It's a miracle.
I can't wait to do Moontrap. And if you want to know why, I'll take this moment to point out that Shatner spends less time on the DVD commentary talking about Walter Koenig than he does talking about the owl over the campsite. That's the kind of thing you could probably sense from your director. If you watch any of the scenes he's in until he gets his next lines, he's obviously a man just trying to tolerate being in this movie so he can get his paycheck.
Can people who hate Star Trek leave?
Good question.
No, you have to stay even longer.
Anyway, since it's the middle of the day here, and obviously very urgent, you shouldn't be surprised that when we cut to Kirk, Spock, and McCoy further west, I might add, that it's now night and no one has bothered to come get them. Welcome to the script that time forgot. McCoy is excitedly sharing some baked beans he made with a special recipe his father gave him, with booze as a secret ingredient. Actually, with McCoy, it's probably the main ingredient. This prompts Kirk to make what I believe is the first Star Trek fart joke. Hard to believe the 3 movies prior he was battling a villain who quoted Melville, and now is an inch away from Pull My Finger. Bones soon lays into Kirk for trying to drag his 50-year-old ass up the side of a cliff with no safety equipment, which prompts Kirk to make this revelation.
I've always known I'll die alone.
Or with a bald French guy, which is like being alone if he's a waiter, I suppose. This prompts more of the stuff that tries to pass for comedy in this movie.
I'm preparing to toast a marshmallow.
In order to even explain how Spock, who is smart enough to take 3 advanced intelligence tests simultaneously even after he was dead, is incapable of pronouncing marshmallow properly, the novelization had McCoy reprogram the computer just on the off chance that Spock would research camping and misread the word, and not actually be aware of the real pronunciation. That's about as clever as Bones can get as far as practical jokes go, or as much as his old heart can take, I guess. Then again, his banking on Spock being sloppy is pretty accurate, since he read up that they would do a sing-along and made no effort to actually learn any, as they attempt to sing around and fail due to Spock's confusion and the unfortunate fact that they are notorious for their inability to sing. Well, having eaten, gotten drunk, sung toasted marshmallows, and farted the night away, they turn in, only to soon have Uhura and a shuttlecraft come and pick them up. About time. It's been, at least 6 hours. Lewis and Clark could have found them faster. Anyway, the shuttle heads up, and we get a beautiful shot of the Enterprise framed against the moon. Meanwhile, a Klingon bird of prey is going to test its mettle in destroying a space probe. The plaque of naked people on there indicates this is Pioneer 10, which in the 23rd century would be maybe, 0.2 of a light year away from Earth, or to put in modern terms, the equivalent of a Chinese bomber hanging around a few miles away from Washington, D.C. The first shot only wings it, causing Pioneer 10 to scream. I'm dead serious, listen. Is it being implied the probe is alive and that Shatner's making a dig at the first movie with this by making the big bad of that movie get taken out by his villains? If so, the joke's on him. Anyway, in space, no one can hear you scream, so the Klingons show no mercy and finish the job. However, the Klingon captain's not all that happy with what he's done, but then the signal comes in about the attack on Nimbus 3. He realizes the Federation will also send a rescue ship, so he'll go there so he can attack it. Really? Not that it is the Enterprise or Kirk, just that it's a Federation ship he's going to go attack it. Okay. Well, first, we see how successful the Planet of Galactic Peace is, considering someone is going there just to start a fight. And second, while I'm sure the Klingons allow their key as a prey some latitude, does it make much sense to you that they'd tolerate people flying around and firing on their greatest enemy who may possibly have a planet-annihilating weapon? At least Krug's plan was to get a great weapon to defend his people, something the High Council would definitely endorse and reward him for, while Claw here is planning to attack because he's fucking bored. I guess the Klingons didn't make much use of those holodecks for first-person shooters. So Kirk arrives on the bridge, sort of. As you can see, most of it still doesn't work, and they still don't have enough of a crew. But that doesn't stop the Admiral.
Bob? Jim. Well, we're dressing informally, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I'm guessing if you want formal, you may want to set the example, Bob. Let me tell you, Admiral Bob doesn't know his ass from a dry ice mine. He sets up the entire premise of the movie based on the most foolish of reasons, or from outside the story, the most arrogant. Apparently, having Kirk handle a mission to save hostages on some flop decades-old publicity stunt is so vital, it's worth sending a ship that can barely fly and doesn't have enough of a crew, rather than having Kirk take, the Excelsior that's sitting right there at Earth with them. Or are we supposed to believe that despite months having transpired, they still haven't fixed what Scotty did to it? And with all the yahoos knocking shit over on the bridge and the yeoman wandering around with Kirk's jacket, it seems like the message of this film is that Kirk, Bones, Spock, and Scotty are the only competent people left in all of Starfleet, that everyone else is a danger to themselves and those around them. When Admiral Bob admits the Klingons will likely send ships too, this becomes even more asinine, as Bones soon observes how much they despise Kirk, and they're going to send Kirk in a broken ship on this mission. If I was watching an episode of 24 where they said that instead of sending in CTU teams in helicopters and armored vehicles, they're just sending in Jack Bauer alone on a lawn tractor, it'd still make more sense than this movie. We cut away briefly, and sure enough, Claw has learned that it's Kirk being sent, and he realizes he'd be a legend if he defeated Kirk. Of course, every other Klingon is probably thinking the same thing, but since Claw is parked on Earth's front doorstep apparently, he'll be the one who gets to go after the Enterprise. Back on the Enterprise, things are messed up with the captain's log, which is apparently an actual logbook that, thanks to advanced computer technology, is small enough to fit inside a single suitcase. It's also broken. In fact, it's so poorly made they have a giant display whose sole purpose is to light up when the thing is broken. Talk about a complete lack of faith. Even the red ring of death on an Xbox is making use of something that has a different, normal function. We're beyond failure of the ship now, since this is an independent component that also happens to be broken, which means that this random sampling shows the Federation can't make anything that works. Spock was lucky one of those rocket boots didn't misfire and sent him spiraling through the trees of Yosemite, his giant blinking warning light flashing the whole way. Giving up on the log entry, we see that General Cord's bio is up on the screen, and apparently he was a military genius who's fallen out of favor. Then we get to the hostage tape. Our Romulan ambassador speaks and demonstrates that people in film never seem able to act like normal people, coming out from behind Cord and walking down the stairs while talking, then for no other reason walking right back up the stairs again to stand next to him. David Warner's briefly in shot, not smoking, so maybe that was the secret pain Sybok cured him of. Sybok then decides to blitz her and runs towards the camera, saying he wants a Federation ship, which explains why he'd kidnap Romulans and Klingons, right? Spock is shocked at the sight of Sybok, so they immediately relocate to the observation lounge, Spock getting there before Kirk and McCoy, presumably because he used his jet boots. He establishes that he knew Sybok, a revolutionary student who was banished for promoting emotion and forbidden knowledge. They soon reach Nimbus 3, where the malfunctioning transporter prevents just beaming out the hostages, and the impending arrival of the bird of prey means they have limited time to go in via shuttle. In many cases, the story is propelled forward by a series of answers to questions of how we get to a desired situation, where each proceeds logically and smoothly from the last. Star Trek V does the exact opposite of that, where each answer prompts a question begetting a dumber answer than the last, until we come solely to the conclusion that Starfleet is completely incompetent in every conceivable way. It's the only way to justify any of this. Now, I've never personally been one to embrace the utopian ideal Trek is supposed to represent, but even I don't think that Starfleet is messed up to the point where their ships don't work and their leaders are all idiots. The more we see of this script, the more obvious it is that what Shatner is really telling isn't a Star Trek story. It's a science fiction story set in his own personal universe. Now, that could have worked, but putting it in Star Trek is putting a round peg in a square hole. We're going to see this taken even further later on. They head down in a shuttle while Chekhov pretends to be the captain to distract Sybok. They need to land far away to avoid detection, but luckily they just happen to be near some guys with horses in the middle of the desert, which is where the infamous Uhura fan dance scene begins. It should be noted that this was suggested by Lowry as a joke, which Shatner and Harv decided to run with. Yes, even sarcasm has formed this story. In any event, the things wrong with this are so obvious, I'll just move on. They also dress up in the locals' clothes, so they'll probably need a good delousing when they get back, and they get led inside, but are soon discovered. Someone tries to kill Sulu with a potato gun, but he evades it, and the battle commences. Sybok is furious because he didn't want bloodshed. Well, what did you think an army was for, Sybok? That's like bringing a group of frat boys and hookers to the same place and being surprised that sex breaks out. Speaking of sex, dancing triple-breasted cat lady attacks Kirk, but he throws her into the pool table, which knocks her out because everyone who has seen cartoons know cats hate water that much. Spock joins him, only to have them both be captured by the hostages, allowing Sybok to take over. I'm assuming the rest just surrendered to preserve Kirk and Spock, since Uhura went and landed the shuttle and all that. Though the script's so full of logical holes, they may be operating under chess rules of engagement and had to stop once the king was captured.